Okay, so this is TG's bedhead matte separation. I was first introduced to this in a stupendously expensive salon in South Mumbai. It was sometime in 2014. Now I don't really remember the exact date, but I remember that year. That year being the one where my first serious girlfriend dumped my sorry ass and got married to someone else that her parents insisted. You see, South Mumbai, social class, social status, not so fancy after all. But a long story short, this breakup becomes a reason for my change. 2014 became the year when I started seriously working on my image, my style, my grooming, and my overall personality game. Now, one such tool, yes, tool that quite seamlessly became one of my most important staples, one of my daily staples, was this, the bedheads matte separation workable hair paste. Now you can find countless videos about this on my channel. You can find countless tutorials on Amazon and YouTube recommending my name below this product on these channels. But honestly, I would be lying if I tell you that had it not been for this particular hair wax, I would have had any one of these grooming makeover on my face. Hell, I kid you not when I tell you this. There was a time when I even imported this from United Kingdom. I imported this from London in order to use and even in order to sell. Much before TME Basics, much before Boston, much before anything else was a thing, I used to import and sell these on one of my own websites. Gentlemen, that's how long we go back in time, and that's how useful, that's how helpful, and that's how loyal this tiny jar has been all these years of my life. But gentlemen, every love story comes to an end. Every love story that's not genuine and honest does halt and end. Now, my love story with matte separation wasn't flawed or dishonest. My love story with matte separation wasn't something unneeded or unwarranted. Hell, I have been with this particular thing for well over 8 years now. That's almost twice as long as my actual normal relationships, if I may. But as time would have it, it had to end. Gentlemen, it had to end. It had to end to make room for something better. It had to end to make room for someone better, someone who understood my desi hair better, someone who was a little more organic, a little more natural, a little more strong, and a little more Indian. And someone who wasn't as expensive as $1,200 every single pop. Someone who I haven't met before, someone who was an absolute made in India pride. Gentlemen, it's about time you meet that special someone. You see, this is the very first sample of that special someone we are talking about. 26th May 2021. The date I received my very first sample. Now this was shit. It was absolute, terrible dog shit. This was nothing close to I would ever, mind you, ever have on my hair. It was the generic bullshittery of a typical wax formulation which will probably make you lose your hair, which will probably make your hair uglier, which will probably ruin your grooming altogether than anything else. This was 26th May 2021's very first sample that we ever received in our hand. So I went back to work. I reviewed, I made my points, I made my notes, I reformulated a few things, I sent them my suggestions, and a month later we get this. This is 22nd June 2021. The second sample of this equally bullshit product. Now don't get me wrong, the vendors and the manufacturers, they were trying their best. They were trying to understand what kind of hair paste or hair wax am I looking for, what kind of hair paste haven't they made before that I'm trying to get them to make, and it wasn't an easy task. They were trying their level best, but these two things were absolute pieces of shit, or maybe 5% better, but 95% shit. So we went back to work again. I made my notes, I made a few corrections, I sent them the list, and we received this. 23 days later we got our third sample. Now do note, this has already been 2.5-3 months in the process, and we haven't come anything close to what I would want to use and then probably offer you guys for your sexy hair. This 5% better, but equal dog shit. Now this kept going on. We received one batch after the other. We tried one product after the other. We reformulated a few things. We kept trying, and I have about 8 of these things that we received in the last 8 months. And finally, in the month of December, I think 7th or 8th December is when we received our first usable sample. Now this was also nothing close to what I would possibly use in my hair or probably recommend anyone else use in their hair, but this was a very significant improvement than all the other 8 elements of trash that we received till date. Now these minute micro samples take about 15 to 30 days to manufacture, 15 to 30 days to process, formulate, and then come back to my office. This, you see here, this took twice as longer. I didn't like the jar, I didn't like the way it looked, I didn't like the way it smelled, and I didn't really like the finishing of the product as is. But gentlemen, it was this batch or this sample that finally gave me a ray of hope of having something epic in future. Months passed, week passed, and we kept getting more and more. February 2022 rolls in. I put up a story on my Instagram on my birthday saying that I'm about to launch my grooming company. That was the day I got these new samples. Now these were the samples of perfumes that we were trying to batch, assimilate, and source so that we could use a signature scent in all of our hair products. But these tiny jars were a nightmare to source and sort. 2 of them smelled like ice creams. I don't want ice creams on men's hair. But the third one, which you'll probably smell when you have this thing in your hand, was our masculine jackpot. Fast forward 2 months, it's April 2022. The funds I have kept aside to make this thing work, to root this thing from ground zero, is about to be swooped under my foot. Why? Because family's emotional drama. I ended up buying a house recently. All of my funds that I have kept aside for this particular thing was gone out in a sight. Flat broke, no money, I have no place to hide. You see, if I be honest, I never thought I could pull this off. If I can be very honest, I never thought I could pull this thing off. Because this was not Teamy Basics, this was not Boston. I didn't have the luxury here to order only 500 or 1000 units of these and make it happen for you guys. I had to order 5,000 to 10,000 units each to make it work for you guys. That's the minimum required quantity for any one of the sourcers, vendors, or manufacturers. So if you aspire to start your independent grooming company, this one thing you have to keep in mind. The minimum orders you'll need to put in for these aren't as simple and aren't as easy as probably a shoe or an apparel line. Now I know this may not seem or look like a very big problem to most of you, so let me give you an example, let me give you some context. If I want to manufacture this beautiful black Teamy Basics shirt, I can possibly go on floor and I can possibly bring it out to you with a minimum order of 500 to 1000 units. If I want to make a grooming product, I have to make 10,000 of these shirts or 5,000 of this one black shirt, just one single black shirt. Had it been Boston, I would have been fine with just 50 pair of black sneakers, but now I need to order 5,000 or 10,000 pair of black sneakers. I hope you understand the difference. So yeah, when I tell you I was not quite certain of pulling this thing off, I quite certainly mean it. But then we did it. Yes, we did. I mean, I have been meaning to do this since the very day I founded Teamy Basics, since the very day I started off doing something of my own. Hell, this was the very first thing I even started selling on one of my old Mayank stores. This is how my journey to e-commerce, branding, and retail even started in this internet world. I mean, there is a reason I was in absolute love with this product. There is a very good reason I almost stayed 8 years with this product. But I knew I could do better. I knew I could add a few things. I knew I could remove a few things. I knew I could just do something a bit better. I mean, it was just a thought. It was just an idea stuck deep in my head since 2014, 2015. A few years in, 4 years in, I'm not going to shy away. I'm not going to stop myself from saying and stating that damning fact that CAVS Grooming, gentlemen, is going to flip your grooming game upside down. Because unlike Teamy Basics, Boston, and all my thousands and thousands of videos on both my channels, this is not an experiment. This is not our first try. This is not something we make and we learn and we get better at. This needed to be perfect from day one. This needed to be absolutely best in everything that there is from the day one. Yes, from the packaging, the product, the fragrance, the pricing, everything needed to be on point, because I am honestly not that rich to do an experiment with 5,000 or 10,000 jars at any cost. There was no room for error here. There is no room for error here. CAVS Grooming has got to be the best men's grooming brand in the country, and CAVS Grooming's heads up needs to be the perfect, best hair paste, hair wax one man could ever try in this entire globe. Gentlemen, I fundamentally cannot cheap out and make a product for the Indian market which is not of international standards at all. This needs to be up there with all the fancy American and European men's grooming brands out there, because this is going to change a lot of man's world that I personally and through social media know of. I'm trying to outmarket at least every imported men's grooming brand from this country, dear gents. This is bold. This is going to sound crazy, but CAVS Grooming is going to do it, and CAVS Grooming is going to do it in style. I mean, all these years I had no option but to consistently recommend this Beret's matte separation to all you subscribers and viewers of both the channels. But gentlemen, just like every automotive enthusiast aspires to own a German motor one day, just like every ambitious man aspires to be a millionaire one day, hopefully the days aren't far when my country will have its own homebred German competitors. Hopefully the days aren't far when our country will start producing global brands but local. But for someone who is not an automobile engineer or a venture capitalist, for someone who rather spends his time specializing in image, grooming, game and social dynamics, at least men's grooming from that import list is now off the table. Gentlemen, welcome to the phase of CAVS Grooming.